All right. Welcome, everyone, to Generational Blessings. We have a very special treat for you today. Shami Stovall, one of my friends from law school, award winning author, and just happy to have her here on the show.
Thank you, Ben. It's super awesome to be on the show. You're always a positive person, always great to talk with you. So I'm excited to do the interview.
Great. Yes. All right. I'll do a brief bio here. Shami is a multi award winning author of fantasy and science fiction. She was born in Utah, lived in California, and now lives in Kansas, which is a lot cheaper cost of living than California.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. She earned her BA in history from Stanislaus State and her Juris Doctorate from Lawrence Strauss School of Law. And we were both classmates at Lawrence Strauss.
Hmm.
Yeah. So start out with the first question here. Can you share the moment you knew you wanted to become an author?
Yeah, so I used to Dungeon Master, DM like Dungeons and Dragons games, and that's when you're the person who is basically telling the story and running the entire campaign. Everybody else is a player. I would make up my own stories to run in these campaigns, and a lot of the players would tell me, "Oh, Shami, you're so good at this. Your characters are fun, the stories are fun. Yeah, you should be an author. You should give that serious consideration." So I started to write, and I think it was at that moment that I realized, yeah, I would totally love to be an author because this is my jam. I really do like telling stories and making up characters. So it was really the transition from DMing to starting to write that I thought, oh, I could probably make this a full-time career.
Yeah, that is so cool in the sense that to go for it and pursue something because a lot of people will say, "Hey, I want to do this or do that," but they don't go for it. So I really admire how you said, "Hey, I want to be an author," and you went for it.
Yeah, it can be intimidating. I think a lot of people don't really like the risk. So, unlike I think traditional jobs where you accept a job offer and then you start getting paid immediately, with things that are in the arts, there is a time frame in which you might be working, but you're not getting paid at all. Like you might be writing several books, but you're not getting paid for it yet. And so it can be hard, either financially or emotionally, like stressful because you're like, is this going to work? Is it ever going to turn around? Am I ever going to start making money from this? Um, I can say that I was supported by my now husband, John. He believed that I could definitely be an author, and he supported me the entire time. So while there was a point where I made no money from this, he was the one that was in my corner, like backing me. I think that made the world of a difference. So
Wow, that's so beautiful to have someone like backing you and supporting you. And he's an author as well, too, right?
yes, yes. At the time, he was an attorney. He was working in dependency, which is a type of law where children are taken from their parents because of abuse. And I got my author career like up and running while he was being an attorney. And then when I started to make more money than he was making, that was when he decided that he needs to stop being an attorney because his job sucks, and that he would also start up his author career. And so we kind of switched, like we took turns, right? He supported me while I became an author, and then I supported him while he became an author. And so now we're both authors.
Wow, I love that. That's a wonderful story there.
Yeah,
And
I do credit all of my success to him because I feel like he really did back me, really did help me the entire way.
it sounds like you two like really worked well together. And just how I like the role of like supporting each other both along the way.
Mm. I would agree with that. I love him. That's why I married him because he's so great and we do work really well together.
That's great. And what was your biggest obstacle on the path to becoming a published author, and how did you overcome it?
Um, I guess my biggest obstacle it would probably be this debate on which is better, being a traditionally published author or being an indie author. And when I first started out, a lot of people, would tell me like, "Oh, you need to be a traditionally published author if you want to make money." Because they give you advances, like bigger publishers will give you an advance for a book and they'll do all the marketing and they'll pay for the book covers and editing and all this other kind of stuff. And indie authors suck. Like that was the perception that I got when I was first going into this. Um, Indie authors are sad sacks, whose stories are really bad, and they just put their stories out and make like $20 and a bag of chips, right? So I went a traditional route. I got an agent, I got a traditional deal, I had an advance. But then when it came time for the book to be released, I don't know if you know this, but a lot of big publishers just get a ton of books and then they just release them all at once and they see which ones are good and which ones are not. And when I say good, I mean just which ones sell on their own. It's like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing which noodle sticks.
Hmm.
So there wasn't a lot of marketing behind any of my books that I released with a publisher. It was just what happens, happens. And when I first got my very first royalty check from like an actual publishing house, it was like $50. And, I can't live on $50 even if I would like to, if that makes any sense. So my biggest hurdle then was just switching over to being an indie author. And I think the biggest lie to anybody who would even get into authoring or publishing is that indie authors make no money because I switched over to being an indie author and I immediately started making way more money than I made in traditional publishing. And that was probably the best move, but also, I guess, difficult because, like I said, in my perception, it was this isn't the route to go because this won't make you money. Um, so switching to that, I mean, I did have to hire my own editors. I have to hire my own artists to do the book covers. I have to do everything myself, basically. But at least then I know that I'm putting in the care and dedication to the project. I'm personally invested, whereas somebody at a publishing house isn't personally invested. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't necessarily care about me. It's not that they hate me or something like that, but they've got 20 other books to do this, weekend or whatever. They don't personally care if mine does very well. They just care that some book does well. Does that make any sense?
That makes perfect sense. So it's like not the individual care. It's like just throwing it out there and not saying, okay, well, we really want to see this author be successful. And
Yeah.
I like that route that you took.
Well, it was hard, learning how to do all this stuff myself, but I do think it's totally worth it.
And as an independent artist, you get to keep all the profit. But I know you still have to pay like, other people, like you said, the people
Yeah.
who draw the cover and everything, the artists. So, but that's yours as opposed to, I think, with the bigger publishers, don't they keep a percentage or how does that work?
Yeah, they usually keep 50%. And when you have an agent, the agent takes 12%. So, by the time that it gets to you, right, it's only like 38% of whatever the money was made. And that's not saying if we also had like an audiobook deal and like audiobook people get to take their cut and all this other kind of there are a lot of people who have fingers in the pie in a traditionally published setting. Theoretically, if a traditional publisher is making millions and millions selling your book, then it's okay if you've only got 38%, right? Um, but when they're only selling a couple $100, your portion comes out to $50. It's not
It's
feasible.
not more. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of the time I used to work in law school. I was working like part time. And one time I got a check for like $30. And I was like, well, where do I start to spend all this money? So much money here. And it was like, okay, I need to do something different because I knew that just wasn't working for me. And
Mm.
the perception versus reality is, I think that's a really good point that you made, in that people have to think of, okay, well, what's going to work best for them? Maybe some people going the working with the big publisher may work, or going independent may work for them. And so that's one of the things I learned about life, is finding out your path and what works best for you.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I think also one of the challenges of being an author is letting go of perceptions of what other people might think about
Mm,
you.
wow.
A lot of people when I told them that I was going to be an author were like, why would you ever do that? You're going to law school. You
Mhm.
know, that's silly. Nobody makes it as an author. Nobody makes any money as an author. That's, like 12 people are authors. You can't be an author too. You should give up. But that's a silly dream. Like that kind of attitude. After law school, when I was becoming an author and whatnot, I did have a few classmates or other people be like, oh, I guess you're being an author because you just couldn't handle the bar exam or something like that, like, or when are you ever going to actually take the bar exam and get a real job? Like those types of comments. And you have to let those just slide off your back. You know what I'm saying? There are going to be a lot of people that want to harsh your buzz. I feel like almost for no reason. But if you can just keep your nose to the grindstone and you can actually do what you know you can do, then you can get past that. But a lot of people I feel like they're crushed by those types of words from outside sources because it can be disheartening,
It can be.
to hear somebody say that to you. But again, you have to let it roll off your back.
And some people will say that and they're too afraid to go after their dreams themselves, but they'll criticize you.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
You know.
definitely.
And ultimately, just got to be happy with your life. And that's one of the things too. I feel like I'd rather fail by trying than fail by not trying at all.
Mm.
And it's worth a shot, you know. And that's one of the things I really, really like that and despite all those comments and it being hard in the beginning, you stayed with it and you're really successful now. And I really like that.
I think one of the things too that people don't really realize, because when they see successful people, they only see the success. They don't
Uh,
see all
Everything
of
else.
the hard work or the failures that came before.
Mhm.
Because I did have books before that were with that publisher. They sold nothing, like they were objectively a failure. And I know a lot of people would give up then, right? Because they would be like, okay, well, I made a book, I did all the things, I got it published, and then it was a failure. I guess I'm a failure and I should give up on this. But I do think that a part of like really getting to success or really being happy and successful means that you have to keep getting back on the horse even when there is a failure. Like
Mhm.
you can't just give up when the first failure happens. You gotta persevere. And I know that sounds like, well, but when do you know when you're a real failure? Like how many failures would it take for me to stop being an author? Does that make any sense? But
It does.
um I feel like if you really want it and you're dedicated to it and you're willing to work really hard, that's like a caveat, I guess. I feel like even if you have, a dozen failures, you have to keep getting back on the horse. You got to keep moving forward.
Exactly. And what advice do you have for someone who wants to follow a creative dream but feels like stuck or afraid to start?
I would suggest really honing your craft. For the longest time, I did write a lot of books. I knew they weren't good enough though. Like even when I wrote them, I was having fun writing them and I liked them, but I knew they weren't book quality yet. And I've been told by several people that it takes 10,000 hours of practice before you're good at a skill. So I feel like you need to be practicing, you need to be getting your 10,000 hours in, right? So if you want to be an artist, like a digital painter or even a real like painter in real life, or you want to write books, you've got to do that. You got to write those books. You got to paint those paintings. You got to play with the digital art program. And you'll be bad at the beginning, and you will probably have the meta comprehension to see that you're bad, when you draw a circle and you're like, that's not a circle, that's clearly a wonky oval.
Mhm.
And then you get disheartened. You can't let that feeling dishearten you. You just have to keep trying. You just have to keep drawing every single day, painting every single day, writing every single day, and looking for avenues to improve. And that's the part where I think a lot of people are a little weird because they want to start getting paid immediately. But if you're putting in the hours and the practice and you're becoming really good at your craft, later down the road you'll have that confidence, and that's when you can get paid, right? Because you know that you have worth and that you bring worth to the table, and that worth you know, demands at least some compensation, right? If I have a fully made book and it's a beautiful book, I don't mind charging $15. The cover art's great, the editing's great, this is a great story. I'm not questioning whether or not you're going to get value for it. And then people feel that kind of confidence.
Yeah, that was so powerful how you said you have worth and knowing that worth and spending the time to really hone your skill because it really does take time. Like no one wakes up and just becomes great at something. You have to work in it, put in the time and the dedication. So
Yeah.
that's big because sometimes, I've even struggled with saying, hey, well, am I worthy enough for this? But now I know like I've always been worthy.
Mm,
And like the more time I spend on something, especially something that is within my skill set, the better I'm going to become at it.
yeah, definitely.
And where can people buy your books and how can they support you? How can they follow you?
Well, I intentionally have a presence on like every social media platform. I'm on Facebook, the TikToks, the Twitter or X or whatever the hell it's called, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads. There's so many social media sites that I sometimes forget, so I'm probably forgetting something even there. I have my own website. You can join my newsletter. You can interact with me basically wherever you can interact with public figures. If you search my name, Shami Stovall, all my books show up. They can be purchased basically anywhere you can purchase books. So yeah, it's pretty easy. I have a pretty unique name. Um, any place that you can follow me online, basically.
Great. And you have a new book that came out.
Mhm.
Um, can you give like a brief overview of that? And yeah, I think that would be good for people.
Um, I I just had a book come out in a series for my Kronos Chronicles. The first in the series is called Time Marked Warlock,
Mhm.
and it's about a warlock private investigator who has the ability to rewind time. So he's made a pact with Kronos, like the Titan of Time. Um, and he can rewind time up to 24 hours. And he uses this time rewind power to catch criminals, solve crimes, solve murders, like that kind of thing. And the book starts off with him kind of in a low place in his life. He's very depressed. He doesn't want to interact with society. But this like 12-year-old girl bangs on his front door and basically forces him out of his depression because her mother was just murdered. And her mother always told her that if anything happens, you have to go get this guy. This guy will solve the crime, right? So she goes to Adair, which is the name of the warlock, and is like, you have to help me. So he uses his time rewind powers to basically catch the murderer of this little girl's mother. So it's fun. If you like things like the Dresden Files or urban fantasy in general, it is just a lot of fun in terms of we're gonna get the bad guys, right? The good guys are good. There is definitely a subplot of pulling yourself up from like a depressive state, or if you were depressed, what it takes for you to get back in the saddle. Because Adair is really very down in the dumps. His brother was just murdered, or not just murdered, but his brother was murdered, and he has not taken it well. And so, for the entire story, he's basically getting his mojo back, right? And that's a lot of fun. So, book has a lot of fun themes, has a lot of fun things going on. The book that just released was the third in the series. So, if you liked book one and you like the shenanigans and the catching criminals that happened there, don't worry, there's at least two more books in the series where we get more criminals to catch. You know what I'm saying?
I do. Wow, sounds like an amazing book. I like the themes. I like pulling the person pulling themselves out of the depression. And so for everyone out there, make sure to get the book, make sure to support. And Shemi, anything else you'd like to add?
Oh, no, no. It's it kind of speaks for itself. I feel like if you like reading and the things I just said, if you like things like the Dresden Files or urban fantasy and those types of themes resonate with you, or you really like when good guys totally beat bad guys, that you should probably just go, to Amazon and read a little sample of the book and see if you like my writing style and then go from there. Um, I've definitely learned as an author that I should seek out people who are readers. I don't want to force somebody to read a book if they don't like reading. Does that make any sense?
That makes
Because
perfect sense.
then they'll just hate this entire process from start to finish. And I don't want that. I'm a merchant of entertainment, so I'm here to entertain. If you like the type of entertainment that I'm peddling, I think you're going to have a great time with it.
Great. That's a great way to put it. Yeah. So yes, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for being on the show, Shami. I
Oh, thank you
really
for having me.
enjoyed our conversation here. Really proud of the work you've been able to do, all of your success, and it was great having you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Ben. You really are just a really nice guy, really great, super positive. It's just great to be here.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Okay, bye.
All right. Bye.